Welcome back to the Your Health television program. I'm Emily Sciolto, your host today and just about every third Monday of the month. I'm here now with my third and final guest on today's program, Ms. Michelle Slade. Michelle is the Vice President of Impact Advancement at the Boys and Girls Clubs of Monterey County. Welcome, Michelle, and thank you for joining us.
Thanks, Emily.
Yeah. So, how did you get involved in working with youth?
My story is quite personal. Many of the risk factors that you heard earlier, Dr. Stallworth and Linda speak to, I actually grew up with many of those risk factors facing my brother and I, and domestic violence. We're a low-income family for quite some time. Drugs and alcohol abuse, having police at my home, those were all, unfortunately, two common occurrences when I was growing up. And my brother and I took very different paths in life. I was able to have some resiliency reinforcement. I did well in school, did leadership. I had some really caring teachers. My little brother, on the other hand, didn't have a lot of success in school, didn't have a lot of positive role models, and I see the difference in terms of where our life paths have taken us. And so I've always had a strong sense of wanting to do something in the world to make a better difference and to do something in the service of young people. And so I've been very fortunate to join the team at the Boys and Girls Club and have that platform to bring my own personal experience and skill sets to bear so that other young people could actually have more opportunities for success.
That's a really nice story. Thank you for sharing that. So when people think of the Boys and Girls Club, at least what I think is typically they don't associate, your programs with gang violence necessarily. Mm-hmm. What do the clubs do to prevent youth violence?
I'm actually grateful we are not associated with gang violence, but I do think it's really important to understand the role of a Boys and Girls Club in a community in preventing youth violence. And really, our focus is on prevention in terms of the continuum. And just by having a safe, positive place for kids to go in that vulnerable out-of-school time is essential, particularly whenever your streets are having the difficulties that ours are. The reality is most of our families in our community, both parents at least, are working because of the high cost of living. And so to have that safe, positive place is really essential, but I also think it's important that people understand that the Boys and Girls Club is beyond just an after-school program or a safe, positive recreational site, that we really are quite intentional in driving results for our kids that I believe really will situate them to break the cycle of poverty, to avoid the negative influences and the risk factors that you heard earlier, to avoid gangs. And that's by really building their resiliency, to inspire them, to help them be informed and prepare them for academic success, to acquire healthy lifestyles, how to resist negative peer pressure, and also to be able to develop their good character and citizenship. So the Boys and Girls Clubs, I think, really play a valuable role, as many other youth-serving organizations do in our community.
I see. So you're tackling a lot of the fundamental, parts of life at a very young age, and in doing so, maybe not inadvertently. You said directly. You do activities that directly, speak to children's behavior and avoiding those situations.
It was really interesting when we first opened up in Salinas. The club's been there. We're going on our 9th year. People would ask, well, are you going to have metal detectors? Are you going to have cameras? And we were really kind of taken aback with the questions in some ways, because our commitment has been to build such a strong culture of high expectations, opportunities to really nurture the kids to take ownership of their Boys and Girls Clubs. There's often kind of the legend in the Boys and Girls Club world, which is actually true, whenever the riots broke out in LA, that one of the sites that went untouched was actually the Boys and Girls Club there, as a testament to that community's investment and acknowledgement of the role of the club of supporting young people to be successful. And so we like to think of ourselves in that way of a real, not even a neutral territory, but it's so clear that our advocacy and our resources are to ensure our youth and our families can be successful, that it's seen as an asset, and that we really have avoided any of the, kind of claiming of the clubhouses, which is really important for us.
That's an interesting point that you bring. If you did have the metal detectors and the searching the backpacks and whatnot, then maybe it would be sending a message.
Yeah.
You know, a different kind of message that's not what the Boys and Girls
Our
Club is
formula
about.
for impact really emphasizes having high expectations and a culture of accountability and an expectation of knowing right from wrong, opportunity to learn and have consequences of positive choices and negative choices.
Interesting. So can you tell me more about your gang prevention through targeted outreach, or what's the acronym that you use for that?
So it's GIPTO, known
Okay.
affectionately as GIPTO, but it does stand for Gang Prevention Through Targeted Outreach.
Okay.
And we were one of 10 sites, Boys and Girls Clubs, chosen by the Department of Justice last year to receive a $325,000 award over 18 months to help us replicate this evidence-based strategy from Boys and Girls Clubs of America, which is very much this process of mobilizing in partnership with the community. We're in no way trying to resolve the issue by ourselves, but to really have strong partnerships through groups such as the Community Alliance for Safety and Peace, where you have government officials, you have nonprofits, you have the faith-based community, and really coming together and identifying young people who may be at risk and finding where's that safe zone that's the best fit to help them steer clear of some of the negative influences they may be experiencing. So we're in strong partnership with Reyes and his team with Silver Star Resource Center. So our staff go to that table where young people are discussed, and again, that referral process, that soft handoff of knowing, okay, here's a really great program that can ensure the success of that young person, and then mobilizing pretty much the mentoring, the advocacy, leveraging the interests of those kids to address their needs. You know, if you have a kid who's blown off school already, having some behavior issues, having some troubles at home, maybe an older sibling that's involved in gangs, you can't just come at them only talking about the value of academic success and, you know, beating the drum about you've got to get your homework done. You actually really need to first build a relationship and trust with that young person. Let them know that you really, truly care. Find out some of their interests and then leverage those interests to start getting them connected. And at the Boys and Girls Club, we have incentives ranging from field trips to shopping at club store, you know, gift cards, all kinds of things that we can put in the mix to add to the fun factor and to build a relationship with that young person so then we can get them to make better choices for themselves.
Yeah, it sounds like part of the, you know, some of the strategies that we've been talking about here, there's some good ones that you guys have, it sounds like. Talking to someone that you've never met or they've never met you and just trying to, I see, drill in the point of school and without even trying to speak their language or know them as an individual would be probably a very difficult task. Do you think that, I want to touch on something that Dr. Stallworth mentioned earlier, that there's been some criticism about how long prevention takes, and I mentioned about immediate satisfaction and not getting that in this case, and some feel that it takes a really long time. How would you respond to that?
Well, it's the old adage or cliche, right? An ounce of prevention's worth a pound of cure. It's really similar. Do you want to pay now and really try to have better long-term results, or do you want to pay in the end? It's really interesting when you look at the cost to incarcerate a young person compared to the cost to educate a young person. It's far cheaper to actually educate that young person. The same thing whenever you look at the cost per child in terms of a really rich out-of-school experience, it's much cheaper than that child being in juvenile hall. But again, it goes back to what do people really care about in terms of wanting their community. And I see that more people are stepping forward to be interested in prevention because it's so far-reaching. What's happening with our young people in America, whether it's youth violence tied to the academic crisis, it's coming to bear to more and more people that it ultimately affects the economy. It affects our local economy and how competitive our local communities can be in terms of attracting business, of whether or not you have a skilled workforce, to actually on the national and global level. You know, America's losing its competitiveness because from my perspective, we haven't invested in our forthcoming leaders and, you know, the current generation of young people. Our schools have really been struggling. They've lacked, you know, vital resources to really do a great job of preparing our kids for the skill sets they need. And, you know, our workforce really needs a better, you know, skilled group of people to draw from. And I think now all these different sectors are coming together and to work together in a very different way. And I'm hopeful that we will be able to get different kinds of results. And I think more and more people are becoming interested in investing in the front end of the pipeline rather than trying to come in and remediate, because it's so much more expensive. You know, I've heard someone actually say, just this last week, we were at a Boys and Girls Clubs of America conference. And someone had talked about, you know, it's much less expensive and easier to invest in the development of a child to grow into a great, healthy adult than to try to fix a broken adult. And I think that's very true.
Absolutely. And you mentioned that more people locally are getting involved in this prevention, in these prevention efforts. What other local efforts do you think have had an impact thus far, or maybe who will have an impact in reducing youth violence?
Well, to me, it's not so much the players, it's much more about the process of how we're coming together. And that's where I have some hope that I see that the multiple sectors of our community are coming together to collaborate and work together in a very different way. So to me, you've had a lot of the same players over time, but the true difference, and I think what's really given me personal hope that, you know, it's not just bureaucracy or talk or collaboratives that really don't get action or results, but that we're coming together and we're strategizing and leveraging additional resources. You know, sometimes I hear prevention getting pitted against suppression. Well, I'll be really honest. I want a safe community to drive through and be able to go to work in. I don't want to have to worry about my child being harmed getting to school and from, as everyone else in our community, that the police have a very vital role to play in our community, just as the Boys and Girls Club does, just as, you know, a school does, just as the health department, all these different groups, because ultimately, to really have a healthier Monterey County, I think we have to look at it from the perspective of contributing to a healthier overall ecosystem. You know, just like, you know, looking at an aquarium, all these vital elements that you have to have for, you know, life to flourish in an aquarium, you could look at that in our own region and say, do we have schools with the resources they need to educate the child's mind? Are we having opportunities for the kids to nurse their bodies and their minds, their bodies, their spirits? Are there livable wage employment opportunities throughout our region so that parents are not having to work 2 or 3 jobs and being absent from the home so that they're not able to raise their child? You know, what's the role of the church community? And that's what's so exciting for me. I can definitely see a lot of progress being made in terms of the different segments of the community coming together and working in different ways. And I think that's going to be the game changer for us.
That's great. And it sounds, I like your analogy to the aquarium. You know, it's the things that you do have in the mix, and it's the things that you don't have in the mix too. There's no garbage or litter. There's no graffiti on the streets, and there's no, you know what I mean, things have to look in a certain way. We want to be able to keep them up and keep them looking that way and keep ourselves, you know, acting in a certain way. And I think too the interdisciplinary kind of approach, or the multiple disciplines that are coming in, really are going to help target all those different things that you mentioned that contribute to these behaviors. Because really, you touched on what the Boys and Girls Club does, and it's all aspects of life, and that's really what needs to be taken into consideration, everything. Absolutely. And the kitchen sink, I guess. You know, there's a lot going on here. So it sounds like you've been in this field for quite some time. What advice would you give to the health department as they embark on this new opportunity, or maybe it's not new, but on this, you know, violence prevention opportunity here? I
think they're probably faced with a healthy dose of skepticism from some segments of the community. I would just say to stay focused and driving for the results, and continue to be so generous in extending their expertise to the community to partner so that, you know, the data and the analysis that they can bring to bear on the community's issues can really help strengthen and build capacity so that we can implement a strategy that brings the real results that we all want for our kids. So pretty much stay tenacious.
And I think that there's some people on the team, as we were talking about earlier, that will really help them stay tenacious. There's a lot of excitement and a lot of drive behind the project right now, and I think the overall community feel about it too. So last question, impact advancement. Okay, second last question. Where are you from? is the second last question. And then what is impact advancement exactly?
I am actually originally from Gulfport, Mississippi.
Okay.
So it is a southern accent that you're picking up there. And then what does my title mean? I think I have one of the best jobs at the Boys and Girls Club, and that's to work with our team of staff to really ensure that we're driving results for our kids. So pretty much my job is to drive forward impact in those three key areas of academic success, healthy lifestyles, good character, and citizenship.
Okay, thank you. I was completely wondering about that. So I think that's about all the time we'll have today. We heard a lot about some of the risk factors for youth violence. We heard some of the strategies and what's going to build these strategies and how they'll impact the youth violence in Monterey County in Salinas. And we've heard a good example of a program, an agency, the Boys and Girls Club of Monterey County, that are living it, they're breathing it, and they gave some good advice to the health department. So thank you again, Michelle. And I want to thank all my guests, Dr. Stallworth and Ms. Linda McGlone, for being with us today. And I also want to thank our audience for being with us today. Thanks for tuning in, and we will definitely see you next Monday from 4 to 5 p.m. And I'm Emily Sciolto from the Monterey County Health Department, and I've been your host of today's Your Health television program. Please stay tuned for Your Town, hosted by the City of Salinas, coming up next. And thank you again. We'll see you next time for a nice discussion on World AIDS Day coming up in December and HIV/AIDS prevention, again, prevention here in Monterey County.